Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to the very last ever episode of Semi Pro. This is it. We're done after this one. My name is Dalton Barrett. You may know me better as Barrett Digital, and in the studio with me, I've got my good friend.
I'm a sad, broken man.
Josh, why do we do this to ourselves, man?
I give us like 3 or 4 more episodes until we just completely lose the will to live.
I'm convinced this is the last episode we will ever do. I'm convinced this is it. So we
So we
watched Mortal
watched. So
Kombat.
okay, yeah. Mortal Kombat 2021 is coming out pretty soon. Some places it's already been released. By the time that this episode ends up coming out, it would have been released probably. Uh, it's everyone I know who I've talked to who hasn't seen it yet has been like, yeah, no, it looks pretty fun. It looks like a fun romp. And then everyone I've talked to who has seen it's like, yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a fun romp. There's it's fine. It's good. And then you always hear people talk about the 1990s Mortal Kombat movie, and you hear them say like, "Oh man, this movie's so cheesy, it's so fun," uh, and all I need to say is, anyone who says that should be put in a straitjacket.
Anybody, I've never. I'm throwing things. People talk positively about this movie. Mortal Kombat 1995 is a movie that people praise.
They like it somehow. So okay, we watched Mortal Kombat, and
Yes, Josh, we've already done this. We've
yeah, I
already
know,
opened the
but
show.
I can't like I need to wrap around my head that I've seen this movie and that this is meant to be a good movie. That's the thing that gets me. This is meant to be good. Okay.
I guess that's the biggest shock to me is I don't hear people talk negatively. Like we watched Godzilla 98 and that was frustrating and that was horrible. But we knew it
Right,
was
but
frustrating and horrible going into it because people
no one goes like, "Oh, Godzilla 98, it's my favorite version. I love everything in there. It's such a cool movie."
right. People do talk about how good this movie is and how much they like it. And no offense to any of those people, but you're an
Full
idiot.
of
Like I
full
don't
offense to all of those people. You're wrong.
I think Isom likes this movie.
No, I've not seen it.
Okay, well good. No,
I was, he's gonna
genuinely
watch it now.
if you're thinking about watching this movie
But well,
but
I did
because the
that.
new one's coming out, don't. Spare
I
yourself.
I did that for when Fury Road was coming out. I was like, oh, you know what? I've never seen them. I'm just gonna watch the old Mad Max movies to like see what the world's like, and that was fun because I watched that Mad Max is a good series for the most part. No one talks about Thunderdome, but like it's a good series. There's a lot of stuff in it that you can like. This was just this was scene after scene of fights that I had no idea why they were fighting.
And so if you're going to sell a movie like this, a Mortal Kombat movie, you're making a Mortal Kombat movie. Number one, you need an R rating, and this movie was PG-13, which
Right.
is a detriment. But
Yes.
it's
Yes.
it's it's the least of this movie's issues. If you're gonna sell a movie like this, you have got to sell the combat. Like,
Oh yes, yeah. Like it's in the name.
right? You have got to sell the fight choreography, and they just
This was
don't.
the
Um,
best way I can describe the fight scenes in this movie is me and my buddies when we were 12 years old thinking that we could wrestle in my garden.
okay, yeah. Or like you wrestling your dad.
Yeah,
Like
everything's so slow. Everyone like they'll try and kick someone and they'll take 15 years, and it's like there's a couple of solid fight scenes. We'll get into that. Um, there's a couple of fight scenes that are like, hey, that's actually pretty solid.
there's a
Um,
quote by Paul W.S. Anderson about who of course directed this movie. Famed filmmaker Paul W.S. Anderson.
famed hack.
Right. He talks about, and I don't have the exact quote here. He's got the new movie coming out, Monster Hunter. By the way, don't watch it. We're boycotting just because.
Don't don't support this man. Don't support Mila Jovovich. Don't support either of them in their endeavor to. I'm convinced that all of his movies are some kind of tax fraud.
This movie had to have been a joke.
That he had to have like had to pay off a debt or something. And so
Um,
he's just like, yeah, I'll take I'll take Mortal Kombat.
but anyway, so he's got this quote, and he talks about how the Japanese martial arts movies are like the fighting in them is super fun to watch and it's great, but the story never kind of adds up, and the lighting is never great, and the technical stuff isn't there. And so he goes on this whole tangent about that, and he goes, that was what we wanted to do with this movie, is we wanted to correct that. Like we wanted to do those things right so that we could make a really good version of one of those movies. And I have to say to you, Paul W.S. Anderson, you didn't. You it's so
I
frustrating.
Between this and Godzilla 98, apparently we're just watching movies now where people clearly had absolutely no self-respect for the source material and no knowledge of how to make a movie.
See, I don't know that this necessarily, nothing I saw in this movie it disrespects the source material. It's like on the opposite end of Godzilla, where
You think
don't
it
get me
followed
wrong.
too
Don't
closely?
get me wrong. This is a stain on the Mortal Kombat legacy. Like this
Right,
is,
and the Mortal Kombat legacy is not good.
however, I think this is, from what I can tell, I'm not a huge fan of the games, but from what I can tell, like everything seems to line up pretty well with. But number one, it needs to be noted, people refer to this as the best video game movie of all time, and
It's not.
it's not.
It's not.
I like.
uh,
Uh,
Sonic. Technically, I think Sonic is the best video game movie of all
Almost
time.
definitely, but even the other bad video game movies have something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So why don't we talk a bit about the plot of this movie? Because
Because
the
I don't
first like,
remember it, Josh. I don't know what the plot of this movie is.
well,
That's
okay.
why I've been
So
avoiding that question.
the first 10 minutes is something I will appreciate about this movie is that it just kind of jumps into everything. Like it opens up and it's like, bam, Liu Kang wants to avenge his brother's death. Bam, Sonya Blade wants to hunt down this crime lord who killed her partner. Bam, Johnny Test or whatever his name is wants to prove that he's a martial artist.
Okay, I will say,
Johnny Cage is the best part of this movie.
well, he's the only character that you have any sort of relation to, and we'll get down to that in just a minute. Even though you can't really relate to him, but he's the only one who seems relatively normal.
Yeah.
I while that is, I disagree with you. I was gonna try to beat around the bush. I don't agree that that's a good thing. The first 20 minutes or so of this movie are so confusing, especially from somebody who hasn't played the games. The first 20 minutes of this movie make no sense because it's just a bunch of stuff happening, and they don't do anything to explain to you what's happening. The only way you eventually figure it out is by the plot progressing, but they never go back and like explain like why they're jumping around to these different characters, and it's
Well,
horribly confusing to just toss you in.
the world building is like if you're making a movie, particularly if you're making a fantasy movie, the one of the key things that you need to do is world build correctly. Because
Is
if you
this a
don't,
fantasy movie?
technically it's a fantasy. A man shoots a grappling like parasite out of his
What
hands.
a weird choice, too. Can we talk
Yeah,
about that for a second?
I was gonna try and wait, but yeah, there's so many odd choices. But also everyone in this movie whispers everything, and I don't know why.
And
Like
every
like
single line of dialogue in this movie is ADR. I also
Right,
can't stress that
every
enough.
single line.
And nobody, and I mean nobody outside of uh what's his name, the main
Right,
bad guy, um
Shang Tsung.
yeah, Shang Tsung. He's the only one who seems to care about anything that's happening,
He's got the most emotive face in the world.
and I think that
Every
carries on. But even his ADR has some emotion in
even
it. Nobody
yeah,
else
yeah.
is, especially Raiden. And I don't know if that's like a game thing that is transferring over,
Well,
but he doesn't
Raiden,
care about a word that he is saying.
Raiden, Raiden in the games, he's very invested in Earthrealm. Like he's very invested, and he wants them to win because they're the best, like quote unquote, in terms of the morality. Like they don't want to invade other realms; they just want to They just want to chill and destroy themselves or whatever. So he's
Clearly,
kind
he's
of
never
invested
been to
there.
Earth, but we'll
Well, the actor for it, Christopher Lambert, he's like the poor man's Willem Dafoe. And like he sounds kind of evil, but then he's just kind of a boring dick and just sits around for most of the movie. And he's like a cheerleader basically.
it's yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, that's basically how he is. I don't think he has a single fight scene in the movie.
no, he so what happens is all of these guys have a reason to fight, quote unquote, and then they all get tricked on board this boat that takes them to an island where they must fight in mortal combat. And
Just
if
like Kong 2005.
right,
Um,
just like this movie's basically as good as Kong 2005. But yeah, they have to go to this island to fight in Mortal Kombat because if one realm wins 10 Mortal Kombats, they can invade the others. Apparently, uh, it's like that vampire thing of a vampire has to be let in. If they win 10, they just have to politely invite them through the door. Um, so they all go through here, and Shang Tsung appears on the boat, and he's like, "These are my fighters, Scorpion and Sub Zero." And then Raiden comes in, he does something to them, and then he's like, "You can't do this about them." He goes, he's like, "You can't have them fight before the tournament. Your emperor would be very displeased." I'm just like, what is going on here?
no, it's
Who are you
that's what I'm
people?
saying. It doesn't make sense. Even when they're on the boat, I'm thinking as a viewer watching this movie. They're going through this, all of the build up. They're on the boat. Now stuff's gonna make sense, but it doesn't. It still doesn't make sense. Like,
There, there's a line that Johnny Cage says early in the movie because he's introduced on set of his film where everyone thinks he's a fraud, but he knows martial arts. That's his arc, by the way, is he knows martial arts and people don't believe him. So he's on set of this film and
I
he's
don't
talking
believe
to
him. Just by the way, given the choreography of this movie, I don't believe that this man knows martial arts.
well. At one point, he turns to the director and he goes, "I'm going to shoot myself for being in your movie." And I can only imagine he was talking to Paul W.S. Anderson,
It was
and he just
improvised.
kept that line in the movie.
And that director, a neat little nod. Steven Spielberg wanted to cameo in this movie.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of the games.
Yeah, and he couldn't because he was filming something, I guess, and so they designed
The
that director
timex.
to look like Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, that was neat.
Do you think Steven Spielberg saw this movie, and do you think he cried?
I can only imagine tears of joy from how perfect it is. Do you know that Christopher Lambert is also a huge Mortal Kombat fan, which is why he was in the movie?
That doesn't surprise
Uh,
me. I know he was top billed.
yeah,
Um,
well, he's the most famous person in the movie. He's the
right.
only one, from what I can tell, who was in other films.
He's the only one who seems to be an actor.
Right. That said, I do like Johnny Cage. Johnny Cage is like doing his best Ryan Reynolds impersonation,
Johnny
like
Cage
for lack of a
reminds
better word.
me of a Star Wars prequel character. Like,
See, I was gonna say, he reminds you of like Han Solo.
oh, see, maybe like in terms of characterization, but the actor playing Johnny Cage reminds me of like any character from the Star Wars prequels who's not Ewan McGregor, where it's like they're doing the best with what they've got. Like it's bad, but they were handed this dialogue and they're trying to say it. That's what I got.
I also love that part early in the movie where Liu Kang goes to like his monastery and he's talking to his granddad and his granddad's like, "You have to fight in Mortal Kombat. You have to be our warrior." And Raiden appears and everyone's like, "It's the Lord of Thunder." And Liu Kang, rightly so, is just like, "This dude just walked around the corner. I don't think he's the Lord of Thunder.
This
He's
is just
dressed
some
in like
homeless guy. Yeah.
yeah, he's just some homeless guy, and he's like, "Oh, if I'm just some homeless guy, fight me." And then he goes to punch him. Raiden slowly sidesteps, holds his hand, and throws him to the ground. And he's like, "You are the Lord of Thunder,"
You
and it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen
and
in my life.
and what's his
Uh,
catchphrase? What's Raiden's catchphrase?
at one point he goes, "There can be only one."
Nope, that's not it. He says it like four times in this movie. It's the closing line. Oh, I don't think so. And it's just like,
The closing line to this movie is the Lord of Thunder, this regal royal god, going, "You guys did great."
no, because what's his face? The
Shao Kahn.
appears bigger than the tower, and then his eyes flicker with because he's got glitter stuck in him, and then he says, "I don't think so," or "Not today," or something like that.
I like that. I like that we're just jumping back and forth between points in the movie because the movie doesn't have a plot that you can hold on to.
There is no
Um,
narrative thrust to this movie.
they
The problem is uh,
there's no problem.
nothing seems to no scene seems to lead into the next one. And one of the issues outside of the combat is we just seem to be jumping like from fight to fight, and the fights aren't particularly interesting, and there's
Right,
also
like
no story to build up to each of the fights. They just kind of happen, and then there's this like breakneck progression where they're just like tossing each other about in the sand, and then suddenly like they're not, like the fights just get like in an instant significantly um uh harder, I guess would be the term. Like they're just
well,
like it sticks in the
they just
sand, and now you're in a room with floor spikes. Like
But okay, so they get to the island, they kind of chill, and then they end up just being told like, "Hey, you got to fight for your life," and then that's it. It's a series of different scenes where characters fight other characters, and if you're a fan of the game, you're like, "Oh, there's Scorpion or whatever. Oh, there's Sub Zero or whatever. Oh, there's Reptile," um, and if you're not a fan of the game, you're just going, "Who are these people? Why are they fighting? What is going on here?" Um, and so I'm just gonna jump to a bit of the movie that's actually kind of good.
can we
Uh,
talk about the Scorpion Johnny Cage fight real quick, because it's one of the
That's the
earlier
part I was
fights.
gonna.
Okay.
I was gonna.
Oh, you were
That's
gonna
the part I was
cut
gonna
this part.
jump
Good.
to.
Okay. Let's just go. All right.
Um. Well, yeah. So Johnny Cage is like walking in a fine vineyard. Uh,
And
Scorpion. Scorpion finds him. He like. This is one of the worst effects I've seen. Scorpion just keeps holding his hand up, and like someone just distorted the film, and a weird little xenomorph appears out of it, and shoots after him and just kind of chases him, and that goes on for like 5 minutes.
well,
Uh,
and it can't be stressed enough. This just happens. The scene before it is Liu Kang, and he's fighting somebody. I don't know. I'd probably know if I played the games, but he's fighting
no,
someone.
no. I can't. I don't think that is anyone. I think that's just like, hey, you've got to fight someone, and then they just do a dance in like a dirt circle.
And it's a poorly choreographed slow motion nightmare, and then the scene cuts to black, and then it opens in a vineyard, and I'm not sure if Scorpion just stumbled upon Luke Cage, or or Johnny Cage, or if this is one of the fights.
Yeah, it just happens, and there's no pretense, there's no setup, there's nothing for it. They start fighting, then a portal opens, Scorpion throws Johnny Cage into hell, and then jumps through, and they just kind of they parkour on wooden stuff for a bit before Scorpion takes off his head, and there's a skull that breathes fire, and then Johnny Cage stabs it, and that's the fight
With a shield.
with a shield, and he just keeps slicing it open, and then he leaves his autographed sign on his dead body.
That's a
Uh,
reference to one of the games, I think. I
yes,
think like
yes,
that's his
that
finishing
that's
move.
no, that's his friendship from Mortal Kombat 2, I think.
Gotcha.
Uh,
It should be noted, back to the vineyard really quickly. The I'm assuming it's supposed to be like a scorpion stinger that comes out of his hand because he's scorpion.
I
Looks
guess, but
so
it's like,
bad. And I
and
usually say, when talking, like I said this last week about Godzilla 98, I will almost always say, the bad CGI is the least of this movie's problems. The bad CGI is not the least of this movie's problems because there's
it's
so
a bit.
much of it, and it's so bad even for the time.
Do you remember when we were talking about Godzilla 98 and we were like, there is no one bad thing about this movie. That's how I feel about this times three.
The thing that this is worse than 98 for me. I don't know that
Oh,
it's a worse
absolutely.
movie.
Oh, absolutely.
I I think it's the
It's
fact
it's
that
it's a worse experience.
I was expecting to enjoy this. I was
Well,
hopeful.
Well,
Just
like
I want to quote something really quickly from someone very close to this podcast, Jay Ballman. Um, it's okay to not like things you liked as a kid. That's okay. That it's okay to grow up and not like the things that you liked as a kid. Even if you still like them, it's okay to admit that they're bad. So that people like me who haven't seen them, when they go to watch them, aren't faced with such a horrible nightmare as I was faced with this movie. I I
this was a miserable viewing experience, and I like the games.
I mean, I've never played the games, so I don't know if that hurt my experience. Number one, I shouldn't have to play the games to enjoy the movie. It's a movie, not the games. But there's nothing to latch on to here.
No, there is like
This
like
is a
we
struggle to even do this podcast episode about because there's
but you
nothing to talk about.
there's like we say, there's literally just fight after fight after fight, and then the movie kind of ends, and it doesn't end. It doesn't end. Okay, so
It
Scorpion
stops.
dies. Scorpion dies. People keep fighting each other, and at one point, there's a character called Art who's like one of Johnny Cage's friends. He's like, oh yeah, I saw you fight once. You're a martial artist too, and he's like in a boxing ring. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna beat up this guy. then then Goro walks in, and this is
I
where
was
the
gonna
movie
say, can we talk
peaks.
about Goro?
I was gonna say this is where the movie peaks. So Prince Goro of the Outer Worlds is. Would you like to describe him? Because I can't. He's
So
like an insect
I want
that's
you
been
to
grown.
imagine. I want you to imagine you 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 take a refrigerator, where you store your food, and you don't put anything in the bottom. Like you only put all of your stuff on top. So you make the refrigerator really, really top heavy. And then you just go over and like push it a little bit. You expect it to fall, right? Because it's so top heavy. Like everything's on the top three shelves and the bottom shelves of the refrigerator are just empty. That's how Goro made me feel the whole movie because his design is so top heavy that it's like he constantly looks unstable. And yeah, it's bad puppeteering and whatever, but it's
Well,
better than
okay,
it had they tried to do it with CGI. So
I will
I
say
appreciate it
I
for
was gonna
that.
say the like visually he's not awful. Like as far as it goes, it's actually kind of solid. For like a 1995 movie.
I mean, his mouth doesn't move, but yeah, it's solid, Josh. Yeah, yeah.
Right. But okay, so the budget for this movie was about 30 million nowadays, 20 million when it came out. Um, and it doesn't show at all.
No, no, no.
I
I don't know where the money
I
went.
don't I yeah, I can't think about where the money went because it's not like you didn't get any good actors for this movie.
No,
You didn't use it all on special effects or fight choreography. You
I
didn't use it on sets.
I
You
guess
didn't use it on
Christopher
anything.
Lambert took all of the money. Like I don't.
Well, like
But
like I
Goro,
said,
like you said, the design is fine and it looks okay in just still shots. When he's moving, it looks bad. And then they didn't pad out the legs of the guy wearing the suit, a- and it just looks so top heavy.
it, it, it's okay.
It'd be like if
So
Hulk transformed into the Hulk, but still had Bruce Banner's legs.
well, okay. So I was watching. I can't remember his name. Simon McQuaid, I think his name is. The guy who made the new Mortal Kombat, where he also appears. And he's like, it's kind of a tough choice. It's tough to design a Goro that works because inherently he looks wrong. He's got four arms. He's built like Batista times two. Like it's tough to make it work. But they did it. These guys did not.
No,
They
and like you were saying, it looks okay if you're just looking at it completely still. But he looks like he would lose every fight he's in because all you have to do is push him a little bit and he would fall over.
Well, yeah, he's very thin, like in his body, but his arms are so wide, and so he comes in, he fights Art Lean, famous Mortal Kombat character, Art, and he gets destroyed, and then I guess that's Johnny's like arc for the movie. It's like he wants to avenge someone else's death. Um, but that's like I don't. This movie is the antithesis of everything that I learned in 6 years of filmmaking. Like I was taught, when I was making films, I was taught that a character should have an arc. They should have a start. They should have a they should have some kind of story that happens over the movie where there's a rise, there's a fall, and then they end up somewhere that isn't exactly where they started. And no one in this movie ends up any different to when they start. Liu
Um,
Kang Liu Kang has like an emotional moment where he's like, "Oh, my brother's death was his own fault," which is just like, I don't
what he's
care
been
about your
saying
brother.
since the beginning. He's
Right,
been saying, I mean, yeah, he's been dealing with the loss of his brother as anyone would, but he's also said from the very beginning of the movie that his brother chose his own path. Like I don't it doesn't
I this movie is frustrating beyond belief.
this movie
Um,
and on top of all of this, we're going through and we're nitpicking all these little details and people are going to call us out for that for nitpicking this movie. On top of that, this movie doesn't make sense. That
at
for
all.
me is the biggest thing. Like, yes, we can nitpick all these little details all we want. This movie inherently doesn't make sense.
It no, there is no element of the movie where it's like, I get why we're going to this scene after this scene. That
No, because there's no transition. It's
there's a moment where Liu Kang follows Katana, who he has a crush on. He follows her out a door. He walks through the door. She is gone. Reptile spits in his face and runs away, and then that's the scene. There's no
and then
reason.
it literally just cuts. It just
It literally, yeah.
cuts.
He got Johnny Cage comes in and he goes, "Oh, what was that?" And he goes, "Oh, reptile spit something in my face." Done. End.
And it's not like it's not well how did they get out of there, Josh? How did they get out?
I this movie. Why there is so many elements. It's so tough to talk about this movie because it's so jumbled and disconnected that like you can't like Godzilla '98. For all we said about it, it had a cohesive
It had
narrative.
it had a beginning, it had a
It had a
middle,
beginning.
and it had an end.
It had a climax, and then it had a denouement. There is none of that in this movie. There's no There was like six different climaxes.
This movie has a middle, a second longer middle, and then a conclusion, and then a beginning at the end of the
Well,
movie. That's
well
what this
after
movie had.
after Art gets killed by Goro, Johnny Cage has like a conversation with Raiden, and I can't remember what he says, but Raiden's like, one of them has finally learned, and I'm thinking, have they? What have they learned? Because
Learned
I haven't
what?
learned anything. Like, he's gonna fight for himself. That's what he's been doing the entire movie. So yeah, then Johnny Cage goes to fight Goro, and it's like that should be the climax, right? Because that's Goro's this big monstrous creature. It'd be like having Captain America fight the Hulk, but then not having that be the climax of a movie.
I guess, but the problem with that is Johnny Cage isn't the main character. Liu Kang is
There
the
is no
main
main
character.
character.
No, I'd say Liu Kang is the main character. We open with him. He's given the most stuff to deal with. He's pretty clearly the main character of this movie. Johnny Cage is a supporting character, but Paul W.S. Anderson, or as credited in this movie, Paul Anderson, because
Mr. Anderson.
yeah, sure, he makes both of them the main character, even though he sets Liu Kang up as the main character. Throughout the movie, he focuses on Johnny Cage as the main character, and you're left without a main character in your Mortal Kombat movie because you couldn't pick one.
Yeah, so, well, okay, so Johnny Cage fights Goro and he kills him by tripping him over. Everyone dies in this movie because they get tripped.
Well, I mean, it makes
Like,
sense with Goro. I mean, look at the guy.
but yeah, he gets tripped. Then he's holding on to a rock, and John. Well, this is why I say it feels like a climax because Johnny Cage at the beginning of the movie is like fighting people with stunt doubles, and the guy's meant to go down. And he goes, "This is the part where you're meant to fall," and he
Right.
gets angry and walks off set. And then when he fights Goro, Goro's like holding onto a rock on the edge of a cliff, and he goes, "This is the part where you're meant to fall." Like that's a callback to not the start of the movie, but you're calling back like a quarter into the movie.
Well, it was supposed to be the beginning, but it feels like the middle because the beginning of this movie doesn't feel like the opening to a movie.
Right. At some point, at some point, Sub-Zero fights Liu Kang, who kills him by throwing water at him.
Yeah, I that also doesn't make sense. I mean, what a horrible weakness to have. And also, what's her name, Katana, just beating around the bush with that too, where she says
Yeah.
like she's trying to sneak information to him, and instead of saying, "Hey, hey, hey, just throw some water at him, and that'll kill him," she says, "Use the thing that brings the life," and it's like that could mean literally anything.
So
And
use women.
Sub-Zero's combat is also horrible.
But Sub-Zero's combat is he just kind of chucks snowballs at people.
Well, but before that, he takes 15 minutes just to like power up.
But yeah, he stands there and he's like he's just creating a ball and it takes genuinely 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do something, and even then, like, did you need Katana to say, "Hey, chuck some water at him"? Like, just
I wouldn't have thought about it because that's the stupidest weakness I've ever heard.
well, in
In theory, he would just be able to, I don't know, control the water. He can control ice. If the water
right,
comes at him and freezes, why can't he stop it?
grab it, flip it over, and stab Liu Kang. And part of the issue of this movie is that um part of the issue of it is that you get built up to these characters and they're like, oh, these are our deadliest warriors, but then they all get killed really easily and there's no tension for any of the heroes because you know that they're all going to survive. And like they should have killed off Sonya Blade.
Absolutely. They should have killed off anybody. Any
They
of
should have
these
killed
main
them all off.
characters.
They should have killed off Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah, Sonya Blade seems like she's got the least to do. She just kind of hates Kano, who is Australian in this or British. Maybe he talks like he's Australian.
He's an Aussie.
The actor is not. The actor is British, and that really shows because he's doing a horrible Australian accent, and
Right,
he's
and
saying
he's like,
Australian words, but he talks like he's British. It's bad. And I think he was supposed to be, I think I did a very minimal research. I think he was Japanese in the games leading up to this. And then after this, he was Australian for the future of the game series. Um,
yeah, that sounds about right.
and it's bad and it doesn't make sense and it looks bad. His face is so bulky. That little faceplate. How does it stick out so far? Just
I
mold it to his face, man.
just paint, like, get some grey paint and put it on his eye.
I mean, come on. This movie came out in 1995. 1995, man.
I know people say a lot. Like people always say, "Oh, it's this is after Jurassic Park or around Jurassic Park," and I usually don't like that argument because Jurassic Park had a lot of care and heart put into it, and it had like state of the art technology and stuff.
Josh, I don't know what care and heart are anymore. After seeing this movie, I don't know what
Well,
that means.
like that's the thing. Like, yeah, Jurassic Park had state of the art stuff. It had millions of dollars thrown into it, and I'm not expecting this movie to have that kind of level of quality, but I am expecting it to have some level of quality. It does not have any. It has it has a level of frustration that just rises more and more and more every minute you're stuck watching it.
It it Batman Forever is a bad movie. I like Batman Forever. But anyway, let's just use that as an example. Batman Forever is a very stylized movie. It's got a lot of heart to it. It's got a lot of style. Val Kilmer is great. He's giving it his all. The practical effects and CGI in Batman Forever are both great. And that movie came out the same year as this movie. Let's just
I
say okay, hold on, I'm not done. Let's just say they had the same care. Or let's just say, okay, they couldn't get the effects budget that Batman Forever had. But what do you need to sell a Mortal Kombat movie? You need combat, fight choreography. GoldenEye. 007 GoldenEye came out the same year as this movie. That movie has some great action set pieces. And and when you compare that, because that's an argument I've heard people talk about this movie. They're like, well, it's a product of its time, but it's really good for a movie from 1995, and it's not. I just named two movies that are better than this movie from the same year, and one of them is almost universally hated.
This feels like an 80s movie, but not good 80s, not like, RoboCop and Total Recall kind of 80s. That's what this should have been actually. This like Paul Verhoeven should have taken this movie because that would have been awesome. They got the wrong Paul when they were writing down names. But like this movie felt 15 years older than what it actually was.
This movie makes me tired. Not only talking about it, but also watching it. This movie
Oh,
feels like a direct to video fan film.
yeah, it really does. It really does.
No,
I
the best comparison I can make to this is, do you remember that period of like the late 90s, early 2000s where they took the Saturday morning cartoons and they made live action series out of them? You had the Power Rangers, of course, which started live action, but it was that same kind of feel. And then you had like the live action Ninja Turtles TV show that didn't tie into the movies, but maybe it did because the turtles looked the same, but apparently it didn't because it was its own thing. And they introduced the girl turtle. You remember that era of television?
the bad one, the rough years, let's
Right.
call it.
This feels like a feature length version of those, but it had
Yeah.
so much money poured into it.
That it feels like the kind of thing like when movies get sequels or like Disney movies get sequels where they're making it with the intent of it being a pilot that they can then stretch out into a TV show. That's what this felt like.
I feel
It this
so sorry for the people. This movie made a box office of $124 million, almost $125 million. That was its box office take home. I feel so sorry for all of those people who paid to see this movie. Like, I hope every single one of them gets a steep refund. Like,
I feel so bad for everyone involved in this movie.
I mean, it
Just
tanked the careers of every. I mean, I don't know of anybody from this movie
the
who.
okay, so the guy who played Johnny Cage has a semi-solid career in like TV now. He was in Teen Wolf when that was running. He kind of like he frequents a lot of that kind of area. Crime TV, that kind of stuff.
Right, so a
Uh,
great career this man has had.
right, the guy who played Liu Kang literally stopped working about 10 years ago, uh, which was rough. Christopher Lambert got lucky in that he was already an established actor, and this kind of just everyone else involved in this movie seems to. I feel bad for the guy who played Shang Tsung, Tagawa. I mm, I feel
He's the
bad saying
best.
that
He's the
name.
best one in the movie. He's the standout performance because he's the only performance outside of Johnny Cage, who was fine, but he's the only actor who I ever felt convinced by in this movie out of
Right, he,
everyone.
he he actually seemed to be caring about what he was saying.
Right. Can we
The
talk
the
about the
choice to do
theme?
ADR, the choice to do ADR afterwards is bizarre.
I mean, that was a '90s thing. GoldenEye has the same thing. It was just a popular way to do film in the '90s. I don't know why, but it was something they did. Um,
Well, like you said, the music in it though, the music's fantastic.
I want to talk about the theme because this is gonna be the hottest take. This whole episode was a hot take. I don't like the theme song. I really don't like the theme song. It's way too
So
much, way
so
too
this is how
soon.
the podcast is ending, huh?
We're going down. We're going down swinging, Josh.
We're going down on Mortal Kombat 95.
The it's so much at once. And not only is the music so much, it's like the dance, 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 dance. Like that's a lot in and of itself. And then you toss in and there's like the Mortal God, like that's going, and then there's a voice in the background just screaming the names of characters,
Yeah,
and then
that's
on
the best. That's the best part when
no,
there's
because
when
it's
it.
it's like It's like being set on fire, and then as you're burning to the dance, 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 somebody's chucking rocks at you, like boulders are being thrown at you with all these names, and it's
No, it's great. It's a guy going like Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Johnny Cage.
right. Trying to decipher all of the different noises is like overwhelming, and it eats at you. I can't. It's fine. I mean, I'm not going to be listening to it regularly anyway, and it's probably the best part of this movie, but it's so much at once, and it's so
Well,
overwhelming that it is almost painful.
well, the only like there's two times I like it. It happens during the very first fight scene in the movie, which is about 40 minutes into it.
It's the
Uh,
opening credits too, which are very 90s. Uh,
yeah, it's the opening credits, and then there's 40 minutes, and then there's a fight scene with Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, and Sonya where they just fight random monks. Uh, and it's like it starts playing in the background there, and that's a lot of fun. And then the other time I noticed it was in the very final fight. So Liu Kang's fighting Shang Tsung, uh, and this was weird. This comes into the fact that everything in this movie is undefined. Like I said, there's bad world building. They don't explain why Goro is the way he is. They don't explain why Shang Tsung has all of these powers. They don't explain what the other realms are, which is an important part of the games.
well,
Um,
that to me, I guess, is one of the biggest takeaways. Is they never explain like what these other
anything.
dimensions are, and they never explain why some people have fat powers and some people don't, and how these human beings without powers are able to fight the people who do have powers. I think Kano at one point just like mentions like, yeah, mate, I don't know, it's so unfair when Sub Zero comes out there and he can throw ice balls and he's just fighting a guy who can't throw ice balls, and I'm like, yeah, Kano, that makes sense. Like, why?
Yeah, that is unfair.
It's unbelievably unfair. Why don't you pair the non-powered people with the powered, and then and then suddenly at the end, Liu Kang has powers for some reason that we don't know.
Well, that's my favorite part is that they're like so Earthrealm has lost the last nine Mortal Kombats. They don't. I think they say like every 10 years there's a Mortal Kombat.
No, no,
Um,
no. It's once a generation, which is the
once a
most
generation.
vague explanation I've ever heard. How often is that? How often is
I,
once a generation?
I would have said once every like 30 years, because 30 years is kind of the average age of a parent, I imagine. But like
But yeah, say
that
that.
that yeah, say it. But
Four
like
score and
I
7 years
I'm
ago, if you want to make it sound fancier, but once a generation, what does that mean? Also, how
I
did
you
Beard
know
Guy at the beginning of the movie know to send Johnny Cage?
um oh that's because that was Shang Tsung. Shang Tsung like shapeshifted into him and then tricked Johnny Cage into going by like play into his hand. But no, I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised that Earthrealm's lost the last nine times. You've got these guys who have fists, and you're making them fight people who can literally burn or freeze them at their mind's thought. I'm not shocked that you have a guy here who has four arms that are as big as my body, and you're like, oh wow, we're losing every fight. I wonder why. Raiden, you're a god. Give them some powers. Give them
Why can't
anything.
Raiden fight?
Because he's not a member of a. He's like so that goes into the games that never the movie never talks about. He's technically a worker of the Earth realm, of the Elder Gods. So he's like, in, it sounds like a corporation. Like that's not his area. That's not his jurisdiction. Um, he's not allowed to for just whatever
See,
reason.
how hard would it
But
have been to say that? Have Johnny Cage say, "Hey, Raiden, why can't you fight?" And he says, "It's out of the realm of my jurisdiction." Bam, done. It's over. Like that's all. That's literally all you need. And there's so many little moments like that. The only one that comes close is Kano saying, "Oh, mate, I don't think it's fair to have Sub-Zero fighting these other people." But that's never given an answer. That's just like a question that we were asking that suddenly the movie is asking. And it's
and
so
it's the only one that they answer. Um,
it,
like in the fight with Shang Tsung at the end with Liu Kang, Shang Tsung just resurrects five people around him. I, that would have been nice to know that he could have done that.
well,
Like they just do it. There's no. They say like, oh, he steals souls. Okay,
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? He steals the soul of everyone he defeats? Because Liu Kang fights that dude in the dirt circle at the start of the movie. He defeats him, and then Shang Tsung just takes his soul anyway. So he doesn't have to defeat them. He can just take the soul of anyone. Why doesn't he take their souls? What is taking your soul kill you?
So we're coming close to the end of this movie and the end of
Of
the
my life.
podcast.
Of my
Remember,
life.
this is the last episode of Semi Pro.
I This
I
movie is so frustrating on so many levels, and no one talks about it,
no,
and I
people
don't
like
know
this
why.
movie.
Okay, I know that we're sort of film bros and we're pretentious, whatever.
But I can
Like,
enjoy some schlock. Don't get me wrong. There were
but I like B movies.
yeah, this is not a B movie. That's why I'm excited for I can't believe I'm going to do this. I can't believe I'm going to officially announce this. That's why I'm excited for next week's episode where we talk about Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
I'm not. Okay. So me and Don had this conversation last week when we were talking about what to watch for this week. I mean, like, oh, Mortal Kombat's coming out. Let's do that. W- I was relatively excited. Dalton had only heard other people talk about it, so he was like, "Yeah, it's probably gonna be okay." Uh, um, he really wanted to watch Mortal Kombat Annihilation. He's been saying that for a while now,
No, we're watching
and
it next week.
I keep telling him, I keep saying to him, Mortal Kombat Annihilation is not going to be a good viewing experience because I do not think it is at a point where like it's not bad enough that we can watch it and laugh at it. I think it.
No,
I think
that
it's
was
going to be
this
like
movie.
no.
That
I
was
think it's
this
going to be
movie.
like this, but worse. It's going to be so bad, and there's going to have nothing to talk about.
See, I think we will be able to discuss like with this movie, it's not bad enough where it's enjoyable, but it is so bad that it is unenjoyable. And that's the worst a movie can be. Mortal Kombat Annihilation has to be so bad that we
I
enjoy
don't.
it.
I don't know if it does. I really don't know if it does. I was speaking to Edson before we recorded this, and I was saying, I said to him, I really, really hope that watching this movie has put you off watching that movie.
It hasn't. In fact, it's reinvigorated me. If I had to sit through this garbage, I'm at least going to sit through that garbage.
You disgust me. You
Plus,
disgust me.
Josh.
You know, the only two actors. I think there's only two actors who returned for Annihilation. Um, I know Liu Kang did,
Yeah.
which speaks to how much this did for his career. Yeah, he returned for that, and I think Katana returned for that. Other than that, every actor was replaced. Johnny Cage got offered to come back, and he didn't want to because he read the script. Um, ah, I, this was. We say it every week whenever we watch a bad movie, which is every week. But this was miserable. Like this was
Yeah.
just miserable.
I
The,
I I want to do something good um after
that's
this.
why we're shutting down the podcast.
We this movie was I will give them this. If I have to give them one thing. No, you know what? I'm not. I'm
What
not.
what what? Hypothetically, what were you going to give
I
them?
was going to say I was going to say there should be something to be said about a movie that tries.
No,
Because I do
this
get the
movie
sense
didn't try.
well, I do get the sense that this movie tried. But that being said, there's nothing to be said about it because they
Well,
tried and failed. And that's
I,
worse than not trying and failing. Like a bad movie that's bad because nobody cared is worse than a movie that tried and failed.
well,
Because a
it
movie that tried and failed, it just shows the incompetence of everyone involved.
Well, okay, so admittedly, this movie had a pretty tough task, right? It had to adapt something that wasn't ever thought to be like wasn't ever made with the idea of adapting it to a movie. It had to adapt something that it was limited to a PG-13 rating for I can only assume box office reasons. Um, like And now Paul W.S. Anderson's making more video game movies and tarnishing the reputation of those as well. Because apparently ruining Mortal Kombat's not good enough. He has to ruin Resident Evil and Monster Hunter for everyone too.
You want to hear another Paul W.S. Anderson quote about the Residential Evil?
Well, no, but I feel like I'm going to hear it anyway.
The reason he is still involved with those movies till this day is because Mortal Kombat Annihilation, he wasn't involved with that one, which already makes me more excited to watch it. But anyway, he wasn't involved with that one. And because he wasn't involved and it was bad, he won't relinquish control of the Resident Evil movies in hopes that they won't be bad, but they're kind of already bad.
I mean, that's like Ed Gein finding out that his girlfriend's ran off to Ted Bundy, so he's holding on to the next one to make sure she doesn't suffer a worse fate.
Josh, I don't know. I don't know what else is left to say.
There isn't you. Don't watch this movie. Don't
No.
watch anything Paul W.S. Anderson. Like, no matter how much your favorite actor, or it's about your favorite game, or it's a book that you love, or whatever, don't watch anything. Don't associate with him. I don't usually hate directors because I understand that directing is a very, very tough job. It's extensive, it's time consuming. You have to overlook so many different aspects of stuff that it becomes stressful and it can be a miserable experience. And I'm on the side of the director. I say, this person's trying to make something that they love, and they are trying their hardest, and it's tough to be able to do that. It's tough to be able to overlook something to such a degree where you have to make sure it's all perfect. I do not want to see or hear about this man ever again in my life. And I'm sure he's probably a nice guy,
There's no
but I don't.
way. There's no way this man's a nice guy. Look at what he created.
I want to say that this movie has heart, but it doesn't.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like as much as I want to say, at least they tried. They did. They attempted something. They definitely tried to do something. Maybe it was kill me, but they tried to do something. As much as I want to give them props for that, they failed so miserably. And it can't be stressed enough. Why do people like this? Why is
I
this a
that,
movie that people
that that's
enjoy?
that's the part I want to know. Like, just
Because
why?
even you, when we were talking about, because normally it's like me saying that, and I'm like, yeah, people like this movie, and you're like, that doesn't mean anything. Just because people like it doesn't mean we should watch it. And then I make you watch it anyway, and we have a ha ha fun time when we talk about it on the show. But but I'm genuine. I can normally see what people see in a movie like this. I can normally watch it and be like, "Oh yeah, no, I can see why people would like this." But I don't even see why people would like this who were kids watching it. And like what?
It is. It like yeah. Usually I'm able to like watch a movie and I'm able to go like, okay, I didn't enjoy that, but I can see elements where, hey, that's pretty solid. Um,
It's not pretty solid. It's not
this
solid at
this is
all.
there's no way this is about as solid as the Greek economic system.
Interesting choice. Interesting analogy. I think that's a great point to end this discussion on.
I hate this movie, and I'm sad I'm gonna have to watch another one.
Yeah. Although this is the last episode of this show, so we're done. I'm not doing it anymore. I can't. I may not be alive this time tomorrow, and it's all it's all Paul W.S. Anderson's fault.
Why are we doing this, Don? Why do we do this to ourselves? What have I done? I know I haven't lived the best life, but I didn't think I deserved this.
You know, sometimes things happen, and I think to myself, it could be worse. Like
What a wonderful world.
it could be worse. You know, I could have a worse life. I got a family that loves me. Uh, I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna
But yeah, I'm like, I'm like, my family are good people. They care about me. I've got an absolutely wonderful girlfriend. Things are kind of looking up. And then I watched this movie.
And it just makes me see everything that's wrong with the world. I see the. I go from seeing the good to seeing the dirt and the grit. I go from seeing the beautiful sunsets to seeing the air pollution.
What a, what a, what a horrible
I go from seeing happiness and enjoyment
Oh,
to,
okay,
to,
okay.
to seeing roadkill.
I'm 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 gonna go to sleep after this, and I'm gonna hope that I don't wake up until society has moved beyond the point for Paul W.S. Anderson.
All right, Josh, close out the episode because I don't know that I can.
Thank you very much for listening to the two of us slowly lose our minds and souls to Shang Tsung. Uh, it's been an absolutely horrible experience. But thank you all for listening. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter. Uh, if you like the podcast, give it a thumbs up, even a subscribe or a follow if you want. And we'll see you again when we never do this ever in our lives.